Welcome, everyone. This is Betska, the Guru Coach, with co-host Raj Vashisht from Delhi. I'm from Canada. Welcome to Mindful Leadership Beyond Borders. And with us today, we have two incredible psychologists, Mariano from Argentina and Clare from Australia. So, buenos dias to Mariano and good day, mate, to Clare. There. How did I do?
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Buenos dias.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
So let me do a brief introduction to these two wonderful people. Mariano, being a plant-based psychologist, is currently exploring how he can best support organizations that are trying to promote a plant-based eating diet on a larger scale. And of course, there are many organizations in the world who are expanding their cafeterias, for example, to only have plant-based eating or half plant-based eating, and so on and so forth. And he deals, one of his organizations is called Climate Safe Argentina, which we'll chat about in a moment. And he's delving deeper into learning assertive communication. He practices yoga, learning to love himself in order to love others better, the law of service, right? And he has a delightful golden retriever named, is it Tutuka?
Tutuka, yes.
Tutuka. Okay, all right, got it. All this language stuff this morning. Okay, and he loves basketball. And Clare from Australia is a communication skills trainer and author of numerous books, including Vistopia. I hope we have a chance to chat about that today. She has been highly successful as an organizational psychologist, university lecturer and speaker, and has worked in over 20 countries. Wow. So big reach for these two amazing people. Clare has been featured in the book 50 Unsung Business Heroes in Australia. That's quite an accomplishment. And Clare and her partner have two rescue dogs, a 7-year-old German Shepherd named Ruby and a 12-year-old Australian Bluey Cosmo. I want you to know that I am the grandmother of an Australian puppy dog.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Is it a Bluey, a traditional Australian cattle dog?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, my God. Winston is his name. And when he was a baby, his caregivers, your mom and dad had to work. So we're their neighbors. So Betska, John, can you look after our dog? We said, sure. So we just love that dog. He's an amazing human dog person. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, folks. So listen, we have lots to cover today. I can hardly wait to hear your answers. And the first answer I'd like to ask, and I think, Clare, you will answer this one, and that is the effect of the pandemic on the human psyche.
Sure. Do you know, where do we begin, Betska? Because there's not anyone in the world probably who has not been affected by the changes in the last few years. And it's been such a wake-up call in many ways to people to how our existential reality can change so quickly. The effect of just the announcement of what was going on, and of course the division that caused, because not everyone actually said, well, is there a pandemic? And that's a whole area that we could start to talk about. There was definitely something going on. There's been a lot of people unwell, etc. But let's just leave that for the moment. It was what happened as a result of that, of course, resulted in enormous job loss, small businesses having to close and not be able to service customers. We've seen the effect of lockdowns around the world, but this enormous amount of fear that was therefore created. And because people weren't able to come together in the normal community ways they would to say, hey, just a minute, what's going on? We're hearing about this from our governments or television or media, but actually I'm talking to these other doctors on this other platform, and they're saying, yeah, there's definitely something going on, but we need a debate about it. So there was a lot of division. And when you've got a lot of trauma and strife, of course, there's often polarization. There's a lack of nuanced conversation. But, you know, what happened as a result, I think, of lockdowns, an inability to work, lack of connection, was enormous financial strife. I remember very early on in the piece being on a call with a woman who was standing for mayor of Sydney. She didn't get in on that occasion, and she won the Telstra Businesswoman of the Year in the previous year for her business. So she put a call out to small businesses in Sydney and said, look, I want to get you on the call because what can we do as a community? And in my position with my contacts, there were 1,000 people, 1,000 small business owners on that call. And all of them were saying that, you know, we've survived a lot of changes. We've survived bushfires. We've different economic issues going on. And therefore, what's now happening is we've put our houses against our businesses. So it's not only our livelihood we're likely to lose, we're going to lose our home. And then with all the repercussions of that, now that has really been ongoing, and I'm still seeing that actually in the community. But what I'm hearing from other colleagues is certainly the isolation, which leads to depression, enormous amount of substance abuse. Hypnotherapy friends of mine saying their biggest issues are women in their 40s and 50s, professional women with alcoholism, and getting on the calls in the evening and drinking bottles of wine together during that period. We're seeing from school teachers and other practitioners enormous rises in domestic violence against adults and children, whereas normally school teachers, of course, would have identified any of those issues. We have young children that can't actually read or speak because they didn't see the faces of their mothers during that sort of critical period. So enormous amount of human abuse, animal abuse as well, of course, financial ruin. And then this, as people come back into the community, increased polarization, because some people said, oh, this is great. I've been working from home and I love it. And other people are saying, well, I've just lost my home. And because of the trauma, I think, of the collective, people just want to get on with their lives, a lot of people. And I think a lot of people have been lost in the crossfire.
Yeah. Wow. Mariano, anything to add to that from your experience in Argentina?
In Argentina, we also live it really as an awful situation. It lasted longer than we thought in the first instance. It was almost 2 years of that situation. We certainly didn't have the tools to face it as a country and as a society. But I think that in the Latin American context, we did a good job. But yes, I see that the psychological traumas are still here in many ways. And I can mainly talk about my personal situation and how I lived it. And especially about the anxiety I already had before, and the whole situation of the pandemic kind of increased that. But I was able to work it the years after, and I'm in a better position right now. But yeah, of course, it took a toll, at least in my relatives and in the general population.
Right on. Thank you. I'd like to turn our thoughts now over to the question on Mariano. What was the motivation for you to become a plant-based psychologist? I'm fascinated. Tell me what your motivation was. Yeah.
Well, my motivation started like 5 years ago. It was a process, but many things happened in my life that planted the seed or the seeds for me to consider this lifestyle. But the most important one was a day that I realized, watching a documentary, that the cows that were slaughtered had the same site that my dog Tutuka has. And then I made a link between this so deep fact that why did I love my dog and I ate a cow, as both of them were sentient beings. Then I read the book of Melanie Joe and started deeping in all this new world. But that was the moment that I realized that I have to change my lifestyle, because it was not according to my set of beliefs and my values. When I realized that, like in the body, it was not only that just thinking about that or realizing that, but feeling that. So that made a huge change in me. And as I was finishing my college degree in psychology, I just had the opportunity to make a research about that in order to get my degree. So I dedicated the following year and a half to make that research that was about meat eating and masculinities in the Argentinian context, and how that topics are related. And we adapted a pool of scales that were in the first instance developed in Europe and in North America, of many variables that related to eating styles, prejudice, carnism, speciesisms, well, many variables that helped us to gain some insight about this. Because the big question that I faced that time was, okay, now I am aware of this problem, huge problem of all the violence that other sentient beings are suffering, and all the violence that our world is suffering as a consequence of that. How can I help to have tools to face that problem? And I didn't know. I really related to that question you wrote, Claire, that since you were a child, you always ask yourself, how can I know more? Is kind of that. I felt the same that time, because I just knew it was a problem and I wanted to help, but I didn't have a clue of how could I help. And that's when I decided, okay, if I'm going to be a psychologist, I want to use all the tools from psychology to solve this problem, or at least do my best. So that was I think that was the beginning.
Wow, good for you. And how about you, Claire? What was your motivation?
Well, it's a long. We'll do the short version, because, as you know, the older you get, the story gets kind of longer. But I was vegetarian actually for 25 years, and at the age of 17, I didn't see anything or hear anything, but I read an account of an animal in a slaughterhouse. In a book by Bob Geldof, of anyone from the Boomtown Rats, you remember, with Live Aid. Yeah. That's right. And I didn't see anything or hear anything, but I can still, as I'm telling you, see the steps that animal took. And on the spot, I stopped eating meat. And I was living in the south of England with the traditional family, of course. So this was very unusual behavior, and then got on with life. And it was about 16, 17 years ago, and I was living in New Zealand at the time. And I came across the horrible hunting of pigs and using dogs for this purpose, and seeing firsthand what had happened during and after these events, literally, because it was on my doorstep. And then seeing something about the dairy industry. And then when my partner and I came back to Australia, he, being, as Mariano said, what else don't I know here? When he did some research, looked at all these videos, and could not believe the extent of the exploitation of animals, most of which is hidden. So he said, I'm sorry, we've got to watch all these videos. We did, and on the spot, we became vegan, but we didn't even know we were, which is the interesting bit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes,
well,
we just knew that we did not want to be part of something that would use and exploit animals in that way and take away their lives for nothing more inconsequential than our taste buds or traditions. But we did have that moment when we thought, are we going to die?
Right. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to be back, folks, with part 2 in a moment. Stay tuned.
Yeah.